Okay, so I'm playing a $10 multi-table tournament online. It's 6 max, and we're in the money. There's about 50 players remaining. Starting group was about 380, so we're well into the tournament, but still some way to go. So I'm sitting at a relatively passive table. I'm in the hijack. I've got 57 blinds, and the main villain's in the big blind. He covers me with 65. Everybody else at the table is a little smaller. Nobody's been all that aggressive, so I've been pretty comfortable opening a somewhat wide range. So I open up to 2.5 blinds with the 8-9 of diamonds and folds around and big blind calls. Okay, so far so good. I don't think there's anything too controversial here.
I have no problem with this.
Yeah.
So
Continue on, good. Sir.
Yeah.
So the flop comes out, King of Hearts, Jack of Hearts, and 8 of Spades. So not great, but I flop bottom pair and decent for my range. And here the villain donks out for 1.5 blinds. So, First question, kind of, what sort of range do you put him on when he does this?
In a cash game situation, these donks are almost exclusively weak unless you're up against a pro player or someone who's really working hard GTO-wise to balance their ranges. So my initial hit when you say this is, first of all, never fold, but also just like it's rare for this player to have a strong hand when they do this. It's extremely rare. And so my first thought is not to raise, though. We actually have something. We're in position. So my first inclination would be just to call, but with the intention of maybe raising later, maybe pushing him off the pot later, depending on sort of how the board runs out, what his betting and the action is as well. Grant, what do you think?
Well, I have a question for Shane. Do we have any sort of reads on this player? Has he played particularly better than the average $10 tournament player, or does it seem like a typical player so far, or do you have no read at all?
No, he's relatively new to the table. So most of the table's been, I would say, fairly weak. He seems kind of maybe a little better, a little tighter than most of the rest of the table. So I'll give him a little more respect. He's got, more of a stack than anybody else too. So, that could be an indication of lucky or better. But yeah.
I mean, the typical read here is that he's got a jack. So
Queen 10.
I don't think we're often ahead. I think Queen 10 is possible, but I think a jack is the most likely holding if he's like just a general regular amateur. I do agree with Jonathan that I don't think we should be raising right now. I think if this player has any thoughtfulness to his game, he's probably not going to respect a flop raise because it looks a little bit too obvious, in my opinion. I like to call with the chance to improve and to threaten later raises. Later raises almost always work. And of course, with 50 players left in this tournament, the current payout is probably a pittance, a meaningless amount. Whereas like with most tournaments, it's very top heavy. So this is an opportunity to win a bigger pot against a player who might be playing somewhat face up. So I like trying to find aggression later. I think that's a good plan overall. What actually happened, Shane?
Yeah, so I agree with all that. I called. Relatively cheap. I've got a pair, can improve. I think he's probably weak pairs or draws, and so we'll wait and see what transpires.
Come play with us on Clubs Poker. They have tournaments, they have ring games, and a 100% bonus if you use the code POKERGUYS or use our link in the description.
It is a lot of fun on Clubs. I have been playing on Clubs, and I have been genuinely impressed by their software. They have great games all the time, and redemptions go direct to your bank account. There's no crypto involved, none of that BS. It's a US-based company. Come play with us on Clubs. We'll see you there.
So I call. Turn comes 4 diamonds. So we got King, Jack, 8, 4, 2 hearts. And now he continues to bet 2.5. So another small bet, and the pot was 8.5. So again, small bet.
Yeah. I think we could go either way here. I think a raise is usually going to take it down right now when he bets small on a second time on this wet a board as the donking lead on a board that is better for your range than for his. I think like raise to 8 blinds just almost always wins right now, 9 blinds. It's okay to call, but if we're calling, we have to be calling, in my opinion, to looking to take it away on the river unless we get a big new data point. Like I wouldn't want to call a small bet on the river most of the time. I think we're not ahead enough. Like Grant's saying from before, yeah, he can have a jack for sure. He could even have like a super weak king, like king deuce suited. But it's a hand that he's probably not married. Probably not married to, in my opinion.
I agree. I think the range constitutes weak kings, jacks, some queen 10, some 9-10, and some hearts. And the problem with that is that there's so many draws that I don't want to play the guessing game on the river, really. I'd rather charge the draws more than they should mathematically call while making it very uncomfortable for all of the weak made hands. So I think I want to make it a little bigger than Jonathan mentioned. I want to go like 11 and a half blinds so that the draws are priced out unless they're combo draws. And they may call anyway, whatever. We can live with that. If they call and then one of the scary cards comes and they lead, we can just get out, be done. But if we make it this much and it's a sticky player and they decide to call with, queen jack or king 3 suited, then there's still a good chance that we can win on the river. I think we might have to shut down on a lot of river cards, which is why I want to make it a little bit bigger to give us more of a chance to end it now. So I think I want to make it 11 or 12.
I think the plan has to be, without knowing what the river card is and all that, most likely if we're gonna raise big, to not put more money in on the river at that point, because now, our assumptions can definitely be wrong, right? We're wrong a lot. We're just going on very few data points here. Even though I think against population, these plays are going to work. This is an individual, so we don't really know. Once in a while, they have top 2, and they're doing this, right? Once in a while, mostly not.
I slightly disagree with that. I think on like the perfect river cards that none of the draws come in on, we can assume that sometimes they're just being sticky with a jack or a weak king. Like if a deuce of spades comes, I still want to fire 75% on the river. But there's not that many of those good cards, so it's not going to happen that frequently, But if a heart or a straightening card comes, I think it's time to give up.
I guess I was thinking sort of because a heart and straightening card are so bad for us, when called, we're usually called by those kinds of hands, the draws, and not the made hands. So a check back is going to still be a big winner on the river. Anyway, is my thought. But the made hands that call or raise are not going to be, are probably going to call again on the river most of the time. Now, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe it's just going to have a bad king and call once. But I think usually they fold when they go donk, baby-sized donk, and then baby-sized donk again on the turn, I think, to the raise.
I think they mostly fold the king and the jack on the river if they call the turn. That's my experience. But anyway, let's see what actually happened.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of ways this can go.
For sure.
Yeah. So I was strongly considering the raise here and, similar thought process. And I ended up calling with the idea of, well, I've got a lot of draws. I have so many draws here, right? There's heart draws, there's gut shots, there's straight draws, and I'm going to be raising my draws. And if I raise my draws and bottom pair, that feels just, am I raising too often here? Is that too unbalanced? And maybe it's okay in this sort of tournament against weaker players to be unbalanced, but it felt like perhaps that's just raising too much in my mind. So I elected to plan on raising draws and call with my bottom pair.
I think that's a reasonable... Sorry, go ahead, Jonathan.
I think you shouldn't worry at all about that. Personally, it looks like Grant's going to disagree with that, but I think in a $10 tournament, you have to have a really good reason to think about balance, and this probably isn't it, in my opinion. Like, your image is not going to matter unless you've been going completely ham on every hand, and people are really, really can see that because it's been so insanely consistent. You're playing 80% of hands, and you're raising constantly. I would not think about that at all, and I would just make whatever play I think is going to work and never worry about balance. Grant, what do you? I
actually do agree. I agree with what Jonathan is saying, but for best practices and for the sake of getting the right type of reps in, I understand the thought process and the balance is important. And it's not something you want to forget forever because exploit works sometimes. So I think it is good to keep that in mind, and I don't think it's ridiculous to apply it even in a $10 tournament. So I can see the logic behind it. I do mostly agree with Jonathan that at most stakes, in most cases, exploit is the superior play, but there's also reasons to call that aren't just GTO here. I mean, it's quite possible that you're ahead and you can maybe make a discernible move on the river depending on sizing. So I think it's not like a bad play or anything, but I do agree that exploit typically is better than balance in these cases.
All right, what happened next?
All right, so river. We come to the river. The river is the jack of spades, pairs the jack.
Good.
And the big blind checks.
Okay, so probably not a jack.
Right. It's a king or we win, right?
All right. So
I mean, my inclination is we should try and blow, like we should do the just in case big bet here and like make sure we get a king to fold, because we haven't tried to get a king to fold yet, right? We haven't tried to get the small king to fold. Because we've waited so long, and now it's going to be if he checks, we bet. It may look like we missed our draw, and a king may decide to hero us, which is a little bit of a concern here. All the draws did miss. The draws might fire one more time a lot on the jack. I don't know. I don't know. Is it going to work if we bet pot here to get the king to fold? I don't know.
I think the pot's too small now to make this move. This is part of why I like the raise on the turn. I think our options are a little bit less open now. Like, if we had a jack, sure, we would bet the river. We would play a jack this way the whole way. But it's a reasonable story. But if our story works and our opponent's not going to fold the superior hands and is going to fold the inferior hands anyway, because obviously we're beating some of the range. They could just be giving up with a missed straight draw or a missed heart draw.
Absolutely.
So checking back feels like the play to me, because I'm concerned that with the pot not having gotten big enough to threaten anybody or make anybody feel uncomfortable, that a king is just going to be like, well, there's a lot of missed draws. I can call here and feel pretty comfortable doing that. Whereas this player's missed draws may give up on this card if they're a thinking player. It's a very good card to give up on if you have a missed draw. So you just get to win by checking back. So I think I do prefer checking back.
I like a check back too. We do beat all the draws that are giving up. We chop with pretty much every 8 that's out there, which is fine. It'd be cool to win the pot, but it's not even a huge pot. And because you both have bigger stacks, even if you bet pot here, your opponent can call, be wrong, and it's not that big a deal. Like, it isn't like, oh no, what my tournament is ruined, right? It's like, okay, I still have 50 blinds or whatever. So that's just another reason, I think, to just check back and see if we win at this point now that we didn't raise the turn. So what'd you do or what happened?
Yeah, so similar thought process. It was, I ended up checking back. I thought, man, this is it. Like, I would play a jack just like this, right? And so it seems like it could be a good bluff card, but given the stack sizes, and I wasn't sure, I'm trying to get him to fold a king now, right? I might beat the range, although it feels just like I'm losing most of the time. And so it felt bad to just like never try to bluff, to just check back and kind of accept the loss when what could be a good bluff card hits. So I checked. He showed the king 7 of clubs, baby king, and ended up taking a relatively small pot. And at no point did I elect to show the aggression and bluff. And
I actually love that you brought this hand to us. This is a really interesting, because it's like, it's not a big showy, I made a cool bluff hand. It's just I had all of these decision points where I could have done something and I didn't. And we'll never know if it would have worked or not. But I think it's really interesting because it's a spot that people are in constantly. So yeah, cool. How did you end up doing in the tournament, by the way? Just want to
so that was it. It was sort of, this spot happens quite a lot. And, it feels like, I don't know if that's the right play or not, and should there be a better way? So I lost that hand. I ended up finishing 3rd in the tournament. So
nice.
Taking down pretty decent cash for that.
So if you had raised the turn, you probably win the whole thing.
Or at least get second. At least second place if you raise the turn, obviously.
That's great. Congratulations.
Yeah. I went on in 3rd to a maniac who I got it in good against, and there was a 3rd player who was small, and he was just letting us go at it. And the maniac ended up putting the beat on me, but good enough anyways.
The Joseph Chong got you. All right, well, thanks Shane. Appreciate it. And that was a cool hand. I actually, and even though it was a tiny amount of chips that went in the pot, I think it was a very enjoyable hand to talk about, and I appreciate it. Thanks.
It's not always the big hands that are the interesting ones, I think. These are the kind where I feel like, I can continue to learn from, so.
Tired of being tired of being sick. In my head 24/7, how I'm supposed to pay the rent. Missing practice, I don't play. Friday nights we on the bench, trying to come up with a play. If it don't work, then hit it leak. So if knocking at my door, praying ain't tell. I'm studying her word prayer. Baby excel, got away with way too much. Should've got expelled, but the school saw my potential. Smart kid trying to rebel.